Say anything.
Why can't you just say anything?
I'm gonna say anything.
People just say anything.
I swear, people just say anything. Welcome to Say Anything with Keena B. Well, hello. Welcome to Say Anything with Keena B, and I am Keena B. Welcome, welcome. It is a new day and therefore a new podcast. I'm in my home. I am cooking. So if you hear something boiling, that's what it is. I'm making a stew. I'm making stew for the first, a catfish stew for the first time. I don't normally, as an adult, eat catfish. I grew up fishing and in a pond in Missouri, fishing ponds, going there and cleaning and cooking catfish, but doing something new and finding recipes, I decided that this was something new that I would do. And also something new, I'm not worrying about people who are elected to government. What I concern myself with is my response and how I conduct myself, and engaging in the best possible way to further the best outcome for my child in the future. So last week was a heavy week for some people, and for some people it was just a fantastic week. You know the week I'm speaking of, election week. I do believe 93% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris, and I am a Black woman. We don't know who that 7% is. But it's okay, you vote for who you want to vote for. And according to statistics, 20 million people decided not to vote. I'm going to say this because I think that people dwell too long on things that they cannot change. A young person who I think was, devastated about the results, and rightfully so. Given everything that Mr. Trump, President Trump, has done, it really sticks out is the 34 felony convictions because, hello, most people cannot get a job with one felony conviction, much less 34. Given all of that, another thing to be said is a lot of comments about, hypocrisy among voters and how it's very hard to take people seriously with their so-called righteous indignation when they would elect a convicted felon. It's just really hard to take you seriously. And this is I am a person who was raised in the church 3-4 days a week in the church from the time I was born through all of my adolescence. So it is not foregone to me, the evangelical system that is the church. And so to see what happened last week is a bit, my favorite word, interesting, to say the least. I just don't have the time to waste on indignation, though, because I have to move forward, just like our ancestors did. They moved forward in spite of it all, and there's just really no excuse not to move forward. There are people who have gone through worse. They have gone through worse. The beautiful part about what has happened, because I am a recovering optimist, is that there is not one person who is not seeing what is happening coming. And so every choice that is made with their eyes wide open. I'm thinking about the generation who is coming up behind me, which for me would be my child. And so to mull over this longer than I need to would be a bad example. The best example I can do is to get up and be the best human being I can be on a regular day. And like I said, engage in civil discourse in the best ways that I can to make good things happen. And so I'm going to read something that I sent to someone today in response to what has happened, because I'm recording this earlier than the actual day that it will review. So yesterday was the actual election. Today, for me, is Wednesday the 6th. But you won't hear this until Monday. And what I wrote this in response to the fact that they posted that it was the worst thing that could happen in the United States. And and I hear that a lot, not just from this person, but I hear it a lot. I hear it on the news. I hear it in podcasts. We have the ability to plan and be strategic and think forward, and really take steps to eliminate potential threats to our future well-being, including that of engaging with people across the aisle, meaning people who think differently from you. Not necessarily political aisle, but people who think differently from you, or people who have a different approach, or maybe you both serve the same God, or maybe you worship in the same religion, but you innately are different in other aspects. This is the time that you engage that. But I realize that people are afraid to do those types of things. I said to this person, the worst, I understand. It's disappointing on many levels, yet not unpredictable. I think Tubman and so many others would have the best wisdom to share. He is not the first criminal-minded person to have that title, just the first to actually stand trial. Some unsolicited advice. Look to those ancestors who fought the good fight for centuries. They never saw the result, but continued to hope for it. They put action to faith, pressed forward and taught others, passed on knowledge and wisdom, warned when they could, planned and strategized for the future. They knew their lineage would partake of the fruit and be able to plant their own seeds for others. Steady onward. This is the way. Okay, so with that said, we're going to move on to our actual interview for today. I spoke with military veterans Sidney Nicholson and Veronica Ashley-Reid about their experiences in the military and what it has taught them. So stick around after a word from our sponsor.
The holiday season is fast approaching, but anytime is a good time to show a loved one how much you care. At WinBS Market, we specialize in local and global artwork. Find spectacular work by Zambian modern artist Ringo Bryant's Chilashay, Florida ceramist Gloria Nicholson, and naturalist painter Lily M. Clark. Alternative payment options are available on select artwork. Located at 23 North Madison Street, Quincy, Florida, in the historic downtown area. WinBS Market. Come for the culture, return for the connection.
Sidney Nicholson, a military veteran of the Navy, is about 78 years old. And Veronica Ashley-Reid is about 40 years his junior and a veteran of the Army. And until today, they were strangers. Let's listen to their points of view. How you doing, Mr. Nicholson?
I'm doing wonderful.
Good. Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I'm 78. Originally from New York. Moved here, 20 years ago? As my wife tells the story, I retired how many times? 5 times?
That voice you heard was Gloria Nicholson, an artist and the wife to Sidney Nicholson. They've been married for over 58 years.
3 times. I retired 3 times. And the last time I was ready to move out I had been ready to move out of New York, but she never wanted to go. And a couple of things happened, and then she realized that when our granddaughter moved down here, it was time to go. So we moved down here, and I've been happy ever since because I like Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do? in building?
My first job I retired, I worked for New York City Department of Correction. As everybody has heard of, the infamous Rikers Island, Bellevue, and when I retired, I ran the entry-level training in the academy. Okay. I was deputy warden in charge of entry-level training. And then I didn't want to work anymore. I was going to teach. I was going to go to the public school system in New York. Mm-hmm. But the public school system was worse than the prisons, in the jail. And I said, I'm not going to do this, because they want you to do more discipline than teach.
Oh, because you
didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I went back and I started immigration. I worked at Immigration Naturalization Service. And then they wanted to promote me, and I didn't want to go promote it, but friends. So I ran a facility in Pennsylvania, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, as chief of their security for 2 years. And then I decided that, I'm tired of working, I mean, I know how to do it. I know how to train people. I knew how to make sure things were done correctly, as I always say, constitutionally. Mm-hmm. Because everybody want to be, thugs. Mm-hmm. That's it. I ain't no thug. Look at me. Yeah. I was skinnier than this when I was working. So I wasn't going to be fighting anybody, and I didn't.
So you had to build relationships.
Relationships and communication.
Hold that thought, because I want to bring in Veronica Ashley, who is a former veteran. And she also talks about relationships building when it came to her military experience, right? Yeah. Tell me about your time in the military.
So for me, my job was relationship buildings. I was a chaplain assistant, and a part of our task was morale builders. So
what branch of the service?
I was in the Army.
Okay.
I was in the Army, and our entire existence was based on relationships. If people were comfortable with talking to us and sharing their secrets and coming to us with their issues and being able to trust us. So relationship building had become a skill that had been practiced for years. So regardless of the idea of, like you would say, friendship, the skill to build relationships was groomed into what I needed to do my job successfully in the military.
So in working in corrections, Mr. Nicholson, can you kind of give an example of how building relationships could, or a lack of a relationship, could harm the process in a correctional facility?
Well, sure. One, the system is terrible. So a lot of times you don't even have time to build relationships or communicate. So sometimes you have to make time. The system is just so overloaded that communication is difficult if you don't give people tools. Not everybody has tools, or to understand the tools. We all have a toolbox, and a lot of it is from your age. I mean, from growing up, and what you learn from your parents, what you learn from your friends, your school. And when you get a certain age, you taking the good baggage and bad baggage with you. And most of the time, that's what we communicate to people. So I just used to try to train people, and I set up training, because interpersonal communication was crucial, because you do that all day. It's in their toolbox, but it's how you use it and what you use. And to train people, because I'm not teaching them. Like I say, you're training them, because they have these skills good, bad, or indifferent in their toolbox. And
Are you distinguishing teaching and training from each other?
yeah.
What's your
Well,
how did you distinguish?
Teaching is when you teach somebody. I look at teaching as you getting a person who doesn't have environment, who doesn't have skills, who are learning the skills. We teach our kids. We teach them right from wrong. Training, when we start training, you come to me with a whole, I might see you at 25, 30 years old. I really can't teach you unless it's a new, I can teach you how to, if you're in the service, because I was in the Navy, how to be a welder. That's what I did. I could teach you how to do that. And I could also train you. But training, you train people who have come to you with skills already.
Would you agree with that? About the differences between teaching and training?
Yeah, I can see where he's coming from for sure. With training, they already have something to build on.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching starts usually at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I would assume he referred to like children, no skills to build on. Training, or even the desire.
Mm-hmm.
So with teaching, the desire might not be there, no skills are there, but with training, there I feel like already some skill, even just the thought of wanting to do. Mm-hmm. The desire to want to do. So the training, and it's almost like digestion. How the person digests what's being given, how the receiver receives. Training is received because it's invited. Mm-hmm. Teaching happens because we, the outsider, sees the necessity of, and we give it to them whether they want it or not. Mm-hmm. That's why we give it to our children.
The difference.
Look at these military-minded people. Well, okay, because given that you were both in the military, the Navy and the Army, respectively, what would you say about the skill sets or the teaching and the training that the military has given to you that has helped you in civilian world?
I went into the Navy as an 18-year-old, graduate from high school. I didn't know which way I wanted to go. I had messed up in high school so much they just gave me my diploma. What the Navy did for me, I came into a new environment. They taught me that you have to depend on yourself and depend on your shipmate, because you're all on that ship body with each other, and if it goes down, you're all going down with each other. That's the difference between the Navy and every place else. You have to work together. It gave me the ability to grow up. It taught me how to be a man to a certain extent, responsibility, because they take a young person and they say, here. And now, remember, we're on a ship. We're going to give you some responsibility, and if you don't do this responsibility right, the ship goes down. Before I got there, they had a couple of subs that sank, and they realized it was quality control. You, as a young person, this big $100 million ship that pulls along, and you got to go down and test wells and test piping, because that ship has to go. You don't know. They don't even tell me how far it has to go up under the water, but you know. And there's maybe 130 people who are assigned to that ship. And if you don't do it right, they die. Then that stays with you forever. And it makes you grow up quick. That's what the military taught me. And so when I got out not walking. I got out with a purpose, a focus. I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do.
Similar to him, I went in at 17, high school, right straight out of, and being here in Gaston County, you could see how sheltered it can be. We lived in what they call the sticks. And I agree 100% with the responsibility. But they taught me how to adapt. Being here my entire childhood, very little travel. I didn't do a lot, I didn't have a lot of exposure. So adaptation wasn't something that was necessary. Grandma lived right there, mother grandma lived right there, auntie, uncle, right, all the line. Everyone is relatives, which means also most of them are safe. Most of them are accessible. Most of them you can go and get your food from or sleep over, or you had a community of people that had the same bloodline. So to adapt, I didn't meet that family over there and that family over there, or that race over there and that culture over there. I didn't need to shift. I didn't need to code switch. I didn't need to do any of those things. Coming from here, and at 17, going, my first food station was Korea. I got off the plane in Korea with no jacket. Anybody has been freezing. I got off with frozen tears. So it's like, what have I done? Why am I here? I can't breathe. So on top of responsibility and having to take care of self, it's the first thing they say, responsibility. If you want to carry, like you want those bags, you will carry them. I was probably the lightest, I was 100 pounds. The lightest bags on the plane because I was not carrying all of that stuff. So from responsibility to adaptation, they cultured me. They exposed me. They expanded my thought process and my mindset through exposure. And I think that's one of the biggest tools that I received from the military, exposure.
Would you all suggest now in 2024 that kids go into the military, given your experience?
I always say this. I don't think it has anything to do with 2024, 25, 19, 06, 04, 86. Do what aligns with you. I benefit now for what I gave then with no regrets. I didn't say no damage. I said no regrets. Everybody don't come out the way I did or even looking like I do with different issues. So I always say, it's like one of the at your own risk situations. Do what you do at your own risk because everybody is not as fortunate. Some people are more fortunate and some people are a lot less fortunate. So I don't suggest the military to anyone. But if you choose to, talk to a veteran so that you understand the smarter way to approach this activity or this task that you're taking on, because there's things that you can do to make things better for you when you're there. There's things you can do to make things worse for you when you're there. And if you understand what your goal is, I just went. I had no goal. If I had a goal, then I would have approached it differently, and I could have came out with the same benefits. He did 4 years, I did like 10 years. But because my first 4 years, I didn't have a goal. And then I got to that 4 year end, and I'm like, wait a minute, where's my safety net? And I said, okay, let's do 4 more. Then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't like how this feels, but I still need this safety net.
Yeah, well, I only stayed 4. But after 4 years, I knew, well, I was married. I married when I got in there. You know, I went in 64, we married in 66.
And you left 2 days after we got married.
And
And the military is not built. I got deployed multiple times because I didn't have kids. Not a husband, but kids.
Yeah.
There's a difference for
Yes.
Yeah. And so, well, that's one of the reasons, because you have to realize I was there during the Vietnam conflict. And by the time I got my, they put a little pressure on you to stay, but I said no. One, I'm not going to stay because I realized I don't have control. After that, I was on a ship. I was on a good ship. I had, they offer you the world when you're getting ready to re-up.
Talk about it.
But I said, no, I know I want to be with my family. Being out at sea was like one of the greatest, because it's just peaceful. You work, but it's peaceful. So I enjoyed that. But I also knew that you join the Navy to see the world. What do you see? You see the sea.
Would you suggest the military?
I don't, none of my kids did into the military. I don't encourage. I would talk to a person, the pros, the cons. If you are doing nothing out here, I would tell a kid, well, you could do nothing in there and make some money and maybe grow up a little bit. Maybe grow, and tell them the positives and the negatives, like you said. But I wouldn't tell a kid to go into the service. I wouldn't say, you need to go into service. Let's sit down and we'll talk about going
And
into
it
service.
was different. I'll give you my perspective. It was different when Sidney went in. Because if you look at it then, colleges weren't available to kids who did not have money. Okay, number one.
I didn't know about HBCUs.
No.
And you're hearing
I
from
did.
Gloria Nicholson.
Oh, yeah, who talks anyway. But as a person who had a young husband who went into the service, I had one experience, and that was not to live in South Carolina. It was an experience coming to Charleston, South Carolina. Okay, Charleston, South Carolina that time. You could only stay on the base for a little bit of time. I think he gave us a week on the base that we had housing. Then we had to find a place for me to stay. Now, coming from New York, I had been down south, but I'd never been around the south except to go to, like you said, your safe spot. And we started looking for an apartment that we could rent for 2 weeks. I would call people on the phone, and they say, sure, come over. We got an apartment, 2 weeks. Your husband's going overseas. You only needed 2 weeks. I get to the apartment, and they would see that I was black. Couldn't find a place. Oh, the other thing is people would look outside of the base. If you would walk outside of that base, there would be people outside trying to find day laborers.
Trying to find what?
Day labor.
Day laborers.
Oh, they relate from the military men?
From the base. Wives there or women coming out. White people would be there looking for people to work.
To clean their
houses.
their clothes.
I could not be a service wife. That was not me. I could not have done that at the time we were living, to be down here, because where I was from, New York, went any place I wanted, knew about segregation, but not lived it. I could not live it.
I imagine, even to talk to you about it, now it's hard for service wives. I could imagine.
It is what it was then.
Because people won't give you jobs.
No.
Because we know you're leaving.
Yes.
You're temporary, and you don't even have to say that because
Yes.
he's leaving.
He's leaving. Did you ever see the play for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough? Get that book. Or get the movie. You can get the movie now. Rent that movie to see
For
it.
colored girls.
For colored girls.
I've seen it.
Yeah. It's something that every once in a while, because we discussed it based on the fact of our husbands being in the service, how it goes as a relationship when they come home.
That's my worry, especially being a chaplain assistant, because most people deal with these things when they get out. I deal with them on a continuous basis every day inside. So when the soldier goes and beats his wife or rapes his daughter, he comes to us to confide in us about this. and to have to deal with and work with him, because you can't tell on him.
That's
There's
right.
a confidentiality
That's right.
that comes along with being a chaplain assistant. People don't know about that. And a chaplain, if you come tell me your secrets, they're not our secrets.
Yes.
And if I want you to get help, I have to convince you you need help, and then you have to ask for it. I can't say, don't let him go home, because he's gonna beat that woman again today.
Oh.
So I always
I'm a wrap.
wondered about the dynamics of the relationship between a spouse and the service member. Even bigger than that, I worry about the relationship between a spouse and a service member.
So, did your spouse ever express angst, or were they also military?
My first spouse was also military, so we actually deployed our first deployment together.
Okay.
We went to Korea together. We went to Afghanistan together. So we had similar traumas. Versus my most recent spouse, he's like, what are you talking about? And it's unexplainable.
You really can't.
I can't explain it.
The Navy, if you're on a ship, you don't experience those traumas. You experience, racism, because you got a whole bunch of, you experience almost everyday things. But you don't experience it that bad because you can't be fighting each other on the ship.
You ain't got nowhere to go.
You got nowhere to go.
There's levels. There's levels to
of
the commitment
right.
to service.
You're right, it is. I mean, if you out there, as they say during my day, if you in the foxhole,
You're going to depend on a person to the left and the right of you
Left and right.
to live another day.
another day.
Now ask me would
but-
I do it again?
Would you do it again?
See, that's the important question. Yes.
Me too.
Yeah, you
I do it smarter though.
Such a great conversation with Veronica, Ashley-Reid, Sidney Nicholson, and his wife Gloria Nicholson about the military and its impact, both the pros and the cons, on this Veterans Day. I hope you all gleaned something from it. Please like, subscribe, share the episode, and leave a comment. Join me next week for a conversation about moving abroad.